Well, welcome to UV Resin number 3, and we're going to be doing some different things, and you can get a little peek right there, so please come play with us. Well, I have my bezel tape right there. As you can see, it's sticky side up. And I also have my bezel. Now this is an open frame bezel, so it's whole right there. We have them in silver. We have a few in gold, but we're getting more. So if anything that you're interested in that it says it's sold out, just leave your email address. We'll let you know because we're expecting a shipment. So as you probably remember, we're going to take this and we're going to attach it to the bezel tape. And just like so, we want to get that solid so that it will hold the resin that we're going to put in there. We'll get a little bit closer. And we also have, these are shell inclusions, and they come in a package like this with 4 different colors. I'm going to use the blue ones, and I want to put them, in fact, this bezel is the ocean waves, the waves bezel, and you can see the waves there and the sand right there. And I want to take the blue shells, and the shells come in lots of different sizes, and you can break them if you want them to be smaller, so just break them just like that, no problem. And I'm going to kind of tuck them in right over here. In fact, wait a minute. Before I do that, I need to get some UV resin in there, so pardon me. So the UV resin comes in lots of different sizes. This happens to be the one that was in the Discovery Kit, which you may remember is where we started. And then I have a great big one that I just refilled this. So I'm going to do that. And I'm going to just place it gently in because this bezel is not very deep. So I don't need a ton of resin in there. And I'm just going to squeeze it. And I do have a toothpick ready that is next to me. So I'm squeezing this in, and then we'll push it around with the toothpick. Handy dandy tool. And especially if I can find where I put them. There they are. Okay, so you can see that's kind of flowing, and that's what resin does. And of course, the wonderful thing about it is that it doesn't do anything until you cure it. So you've got time to move it around and to do whatever you like. Now I'm going to push this underneath those waves, and that's also where I'm going to put the shells so that they're kind of just flowing up underneath the waves. The waves are crashing into the shore. That sound good? And I'm going to bring it there so that it gets into those spaces. And I did have someone ask me about what you do about bubbles. And at the time, I hadn't had an issue with bubbles, but since then I have. So I'm going to show you. We did this last week, and you just use a fire lighter, a fire starter, and just put it over the uncured resin, and the bubbles will disappear, which is very convenient. Kind of odd putting a flame to something that's liquid, but that's what happens. Okay, so I've got the resin secure all around. Then I'm going to take the shells, pieces, and I'm going to slip them just wherever I want them. I'm going to put them over here and kind of just tuck them under this piece. So, and there's no right or wrong to this. You can do them on either side. In fact, it might have been a little bit easier to do it on the other side. So, and just as I said, you can use any of the colors. With silver, I have a tendency to use blues and purples, but that certainly is nothing that you have to do. In fact, I have found that I will put the bezel over whatever I want to use just to see how I want to play with it, how I want to use it. And that works very nicely for me, and I recommend it for you too. Okay, I'm just about done here. I don't want this to get very thick. Okay, now about the curing. In the Discovery Kit, okay, you can kind of see that? So that's just nested right under there. In the Discovery Kit, there is a flashlight, and that works perfectly well. However, if you really get into this, you kind of want to be working on something and then curing another. So I have invested, I think it's $11.50 into this, and you can see it flashes when it's plugged in. And I can just go like this for, let's see, 15, 30, and 60 seconds, and then it's going to cure. And that just is really, really nice. We will not sit here and wait for it to cure for 60 seconds. I'm going to come back to you in just a moment. Okay, now this is cured, it's not sticky. Then I'm going to come back because the shells are exposed a bit, and I'm going to do another bit of resin on top. And again, I just want to keep it very very light coat, and then I'll just scoot it all over. And this will go over the whole top. And I'll scoot it around with the toothpick just like I did before. And then we will cure it just like we did before. So while that is flowing, I just wanted to show you something else. And like I said, this is what I have a tendency to do, is to take my bezels and place them on top of the product. And this is kind of a gray, silver gray. You've got the red, the blue that I used, and turquoise. So you can see and you can play with, what do I want to use? How would this be without committing a whole bezel to it? So that works out pretty nicely. And we will then move on to our next project, which is going to be using sand. Yes, this is a beachy theme, isn't it? So we have beach sand, which is the tan, and we have white sand. And I want to show you this. And this I did. This is another one, another bezel. And you can see the sand in it. Well, the process of doing that is just a little bit different than what we've done before. So let me show you. And I will take the gold, and I'm going to take my sand, and this time I'm going to use the beach sand, and I have to have a little cup, and I also need a popsicle stick, craft stick. Now what you do to make the sand work is you pour a little bit, and I have to tell you, you need the tiniest a bit, but we're going to mix this with the resin. So you see, tiny, tiny amount in there. And I'm going to pour in our resin and mix it up with the craft stick. And you just want it so that it is all mixed up. So this is exactly what I tend to do. I put in a little tiny bit of resin, and then I need to put in more. So you may need to do the same thing. Okay. And just mix it up. And we're going to put this in. Okay. And like I said, it just takes the tiniest amount of sand. So we have about a tablespoon in the packages, or you can gather your own, but that will go a long, long way. So I'm going to, whoops, where is my, my bezel tape? My goodness, that was almost a mistake. Do this, and I'll pull this out. I just have this on the white so you can see it, because when I put that brown sand down, you're not going to be able to see it against the craft mat that is covering my work surface. So here we go. Then I'm going to bring this in. I guess I'm going to bring it to the shells like I did before. And you can see it's going to flow a little bit. And like everything else, you don't want it very thick. So back to my handy dandy toothpick, I'm going to slide this in. And I want to keep it kind of down here. Now, I'm going to cure this, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to finish it with the UV resin on top. Okay, it has been cured, and so the sand is still rough because it's mixed in with the resin. So now I'm going to take our UV resin and fill the top area, and again, and then I'm also going to go over the sand a bit. So you can see this is another one of the finishes that's in gold and silver. And I have something else that I want to add to this that is new and kind of fun. And these are tiny inclusions. So let me smooth that resin clear to the edges. Because right now there's nothing at the top of the bezel. And so the inclusions I have are very tiny three-dimensional gold pieces, and they're seashells and starfish and all sorts of wonderfulness. Very tiny, so they're going to fit in perfectly with our bezels. In fact, any of the sizes that you have or want to have. Okay. Now, I mentioned earlier about removing the bubbles, so let me demonstrate that. I want to make sure I have this all the edges touching. Okay, and so I'm going to get a fire starter, okay? One of these, you get them at the grocery store, and push that forward and then do this, and you just actually have that flame touching your resin, which feels really strange to me, but okay, that's what we're doing. And then if you have anything that didn't get moved like you want it to, you can take another stab at it or move it, whatever you like. Now, the brand new thing are these little tiny guys, and I'll scoot them into the camera so that you can see. And I guess I need to scoot them a little bit more. So they're shells and starfish, and I'm going to use my tweezers and get them onto the sand, because that's just going to add another dimension to my piece. I'm going to put it right there, and that's why these tweezers come in so handy. And you can even create a little scene if you would like to do that. So this down here, I always like to do an uneven number, and go. Just going to let them all kind of nestle right in that corner, and we will put just a dab of resin on top of that. We'll just do another bit of the flame just to make sure that we've got everything covered. Is adding that extra layer might have added some bubbles, and we don't want that. You can see that everything is still liquid. And you kind of have to do the curing of the sand so that these don't sink in. That's an important thing. Here we go. More flame. You probably saw that bubble pop. Okay, now we're going to do another minute or so under the lamp. Okay, now we're done. You can see that's all cured, and we will pull it off the backing. And there you go. And again, let me put it against white so you can see it. So there it is on gold, and there it is on silver. This has got the inclusions, obviously, so nice. And I like how that is see-through. That just really does a nice job. Okay, now I want to show you this wave appearance, and I think this is really fun and nice. You can do it in absolutely any of the sizes, any of the finishes. So this is a rectangle, this is the new oval, or teardrop, which I think is absolutely gorgeous. But let me just do this in the circle, which is kind of where we started. And when you're putting this on the tape, you just want to make sure, obviously, that this loop, because it's wider than the bezel, that's off of the tape. That way the tape will be secure. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing, start with the sand, and because I already have the sand mixed with the resin, I don't have to do any more. And so let me just gather all of this. So the sand's going to be at the bottom, and scoop this in. And you want the sand to be quite a bit of the finished piece. So scoot this guy around. And again, because we're going to put some of those 3D inclusions on it, we want to make sure that there's room, that we don't get, excuse me, don't get too high. One thing about reusing your plastic container, excuse me, is that you can just put this underneath your lamp and make it hard and then pry it out and reuse your plastic container. So that's a nice thing to do. Okay, so I'm going to scoot this around. And again, just don't want it to get too high. And you do want it to be a pretty good bit of the piece, filling it. Okay, so like that. Now I'm using the beach sand. You certainly could use the white sand. And I'll show you a project using the white sand also in just a few minutes. Okay, so we have this, and now I'm going to put turquoise on top of that. And the turquoise, as you might remember, is translucent. We're going to use turquoise, blue, and white. Pretty interesting. In fact, you can kind of see them on the finished piece. But how you get that is interesting. Okay. So turquoise is going to go next, and it's going right next to the sand. So let me pour that in, just right along the edge. There we go. And again, it's going to spread a bit. Now we want to get the fire on this, and you can probably see that bubble. So we want to make sure to get that going away. Oop. Okay. And it pops, just magically pops. Okay, now we're going to do the blue next, and then we're going to cure it. Now the blue is also translucent, so it's going up here. We're not mixing them, but they are going to have a tendency to blend a bit just on their own. So, going to make sure that that is against the bezel all the way around. We don't want any holes. And let me do the fire again, just to be safe. Now, I'm going to do a 90-second cure, so I will be back. Okay, so we have cured it. Now I'm going to take the white. Now the white is opaque, and it's going to go at the top, and there's just going to be a stream of it, like so. And then that's going to, again, kind of disperse. And then we take the clear resin and just put a couple of drops right on top of the white. And so, great big bubble. And that's going to shift the white down. And we can also add clear resin as soon as that's done its job. Now you see that bubble forming. We don't want that. So bring in a toothpick to pop it. Come on, bubble. There you go. And let the clear resin do its job as it's moving things around. And can you see what's happening? It's moving ever so slowly. And that's kind of what happened here. It's not kind of, it's exactly what happened here. So it brings it down, and we will want to put fire on it again to make sure that we're not creating more bubbles. So I'll bring the fire in. I used to have trouble lighting these things, but now that I'm doing resin, I don't have any trouble. Probably practice makes perfect, don't you think? Now the other thing we're going to do is to add some of those three-dimensional inclusions down at the bottom. I absolutely love the seahorse. I think it's just charming and wonderful. And in order to make it stick, I'm going to just dip it a little bit into some of our resin, some of our sand resin that is left over. And I'm going to place it down here. There's my little seahorse. I think is so cute. No, the seahorse probably wouldn't be on the sand, but you know, work with me on this, okay? Now I'm going to pick up, I'm going to attempt to pick up one of the other shells. This is a little more three-dimensional than those first ones I showed you. And there are two sizes of this shell that I'm picking up. One is larger than the other. So I'll bring this little guy right there. And usually you want an odd number of items in a project, but in this case I have 3 shells and 1 seahorse, so I'm just going to let that be. You can probably tell at the top how the white is moving down. It's going to even disperse more as time goes on. And the idea is you're kind of standing on shore and that wave is coming at you. So let me get a fire back on just to make sure things are happening as we expect. Then we are going to add more clear at the bottom to encompass our pieces down here. And I'll bring in my toothpick again just to make sure that they're staying where they need to, and we will do the fire one last time. Now, if you weren't adding the pieces, you obviously could skip a couple of steps here. And we're just getting that resin to cover everything. And it doesn't hurt if something is poking out. I mean, the world doesn't end. That will be fine. And you see how that that white has dissipated going down lower. I just need a touch more of my resin, and I'm going to stop the action by getting the curing happening. So just a little bit right there, and fire again. And then we will cure it. And while that is curing, just wanted to show you. So these, you can do this in absolutely any of the bezels. So you can see I used the same colors in both of these. And then I thought, hey, what about the white sand? And white sand is in Florida. It's in all sorts of places, as well as Australia. But Florida got me thinking, so I did white sand. We do have these inclusions. We've got suns, we've got a palm tree, and we have a flamingo. And I thought that was just really kind of perfect to have with this. And it is white sand, it's the clear, and those inclusions are just going right into this teardrop. So very, very fun. And you can see that these have kind of this coming down a little bit faster. It's cooler in here as we are taping. It's not as warm as it would be in your home. And so our white this time is a little bit more as a little more solid piece. And it is kind of drifting down, not quite as much as it did in those two pieces, but that's the deal with resin. You get something a little bit different each time. Now we will probably need to cure this a couple of times. We will turn it over, cure it on the back. So as you have seen this time, we are all about seashore. So we've done the shell inclusions. We've learned about doing sand. We do have the bezels in gold and silver. Maybe not all of them at this moment by the time you get ready to make a buying decision, but we will have more. So just, leave your email address, and then you can also do our sand and sea imagery here. Just works so well. Lots of fun with resin. I hope you have enjoyed this. Let me know in the comments. And you can see the money saver on the right side of your screen. You can see everything that we've used down below, and that will take good care of you. Until next time, we'll see you later.